Johnson, welcome to Closing Arguments, sir.
Thanks, Walter. Good to be on.
It's been a while since we've chatted. I think the last time I talked to you was before the primary.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and a lot has happened, obviously, between then and now. Give us a quick update on where we're at with the campaign, and then I want to get into the news from today, which was stunning.
The campaign is going extremely well. We're actually almost exactly halfway through the general election from the primary. It was 6 weeks ago yesterday, and that was 6 weeks from yesterday. So we're halfway there. Just had a great fundraising report. We got over $1 million cash on hand, and that continues to get even better. So we're on TV. We'll be on TV heavy the rest of the way. We'll be heavy radio in greater Minnesota, heavy digital as well. And there just continues to be this enthusiasm all over the state for change, for something different. So I feel great. We just got to keep working, and I got to make sure our message gets out.
Yeah, those fundraising numbers were impressive, and I do want to come back around to talking about those and the context of the campaign. But before we get there, you had a Facebook post earlier today wherein you disclosed a truly remarkable story related to your campaign. Rather than read it, I got you on the line. Why don't you just tell us what happened?
Sure. So this happened to Donna Bergstrom, who's my running mate. Donna lives up in Duluth, and it was a few days ago. And she has a tracker up there that sometimes shows up at, where she is, but also, I think, tracks for Radinovich.
And just to interrupt you real quick, for those who don't know, a tracker is somebody who is hired by the opposing campaign, by the Democrats, to follow around candidates and basically record and keep track of everything that they do for opposition research purposes.
Yeah, in hopes to say something stupid or something that can be misconstrued. And so anyway, I met this tracker, and Donna, you get to know your trackers. It's just the way of life. And oftentimes, you actually have a decent relationship with the trackers, even though they're trying to do something somewhat nefarious, and both sides do it. And so anyway, she came home late one evening, and the tracker was actually in her house, sitting in the living room with her husband and her 13-year-old son. He had come to the door and said his phone was dead and he needed to call somebody to get a ride, call his dad to get a ride. Her husband didn't know he was a tracker, nor did he disclose that. So he actually came in the house, and she came home, and he was sitting there. And so, Donna is not easily rattled. She's a former lieutenant colonel in the Marines, so she pulled him outside and talked to him and asked to see his phone, and it truly was dead. And then waited outside until his dad came, because he did come inside the house and called his dad and sent him on his way. But, about as inappropriate and wrong as you can possibly get. And, as I mentioned in the post, we're at a point now where the left is literally chasing candidates and their families out of restaurants and harassing them. And, this is beyond the pale. And so, the kid's 15 years old. So it does beg the question, why in the world the DFL is having a 15-year-old do tracking for them? That is insane and wrong in and of itself. So we've chosen not to release his name because, I've had teenage boys, and they do really stupid and inappropriate things sometimes. But we also wanted to make it crystal clear that, this is the tactics of the left, and if something like this happens again, we're not going to just say something about it on Facebook. We'll get police involved and everything else. It's just totally inappropriate.
Yeah, it is absolutely stunning that the notion that somebody would, under false pretenses, enter your home in an effort to gain opposition research. It brings sleaze down to a whole new level.
Yep.
And as you say, this is indicative of where we find ourselves right now in terms of where the left is at. It's just no holds barred. I describe it as total war. There are no rules. They've decided that they're going to salt the earth and step over our political remains. And so in that context, we hear every cycle, kind of on a perennial basis, you always hear this is the most important election in the history of the world, in the history of your life. But I've been telling our listeners, this time around, there's no hyperbole to that. Like, there's a real sense of high stakes in this election, both nationally and here in the state of Minnesota. From your perspective, you're out there every day, you're talking to folks. How do you describe the stakes of this election?
I actually bring this up all the time. I say, every election I've ever been involved with, politicians say, this might be the most important election of our lifetime.
Right.
And so I try not to use that hyperbole, and I've never used it in a race that I've been part of before. But this one is as important as I can remember for a statewide race. You can look at presidential races and say they certainly have more consequence. But this one for the state of Minnesota, we have just had 8 years of, the state has changed dramatically in 8 years, particularly government, and the attitude and the culture in our state government, the growth of government, the reducing of people's liberty in this state, the fact that government is completely unaccountable. And if we have 4 more years of that, or God forbid 8 more years of that, I really, truly believe that we will be so far down the road to California or Illinois that it may be tough to come back. And it won't be the state that any of us grew up in, nor will it be a state that a lot of us want to hang around anymore. So to me, as somebody who wants to live here the rest of my life and somebody who wants my kids to choose to be here and raise a family, it is as important as I can imagine, because I look at where Walz wants to take the state. I mean, media likes to portray him as a moderate from southern Minnesota.
Right.
But look at the promises he has made.
Right.
He talks about one Minnesota, he wants one California. He wants one Venezuela, actually,
right.
but that's maybe a little too much hyperbole itself. But he wants single-payer health care. He wants to be a sanctuary state, the only one in the upper Midwest. By the way, the only single-payer health care state in the country. California rejected that.
Yeah, right.
They said it was too expensive. He's proud of his F from the NRA. He is talking about a 35% gas tax increase as, quote, a starting point. And he's made $18 billion in spending promises per year that will make it impossible for anyone to live here anymore. So, we 4 or 8 years of that, and we're in big trouble.
Yeah, and it is truly ridiculous, and I know you've made it a cornerstone of your campaign to point to the promises that Tim Walz is making on the campaign trail, and just the sheer expense and the absurdity that we would ever be able to pay for this stuff and somehow maintain a tax environment that would welcome any sort of business whatsoever. In terms of the value proposition, aside from just stopping Tim Walz, which is a worthwhile effort in its own right, what's the value proposition of voting for Jeff Johnson? What's your vision for what government can do and should do on behalf of the people who live in Minnesota?
It's all about, first of all, focusing on people over government. That is absolutely crucial, and that is the fundamental difference between the two of us. But it's about creating more opportunities for people. There are things that government can do. Also, there are things that government shouldn't do that allow people to make choices for themselves, to create greater opportunities for them to have better jobs, to find careers rather than, holding 2 lower wage jobs. We're actually just exploding with activity in this state because we're not chasing away entrepreneurs, and we got young people who actually choose to stay here, even in greater Minnesota, rather than end up somewhere else because the better opportunities are there. And just giving people more control over their own daily lives rather than having a government that wants to help us all make better decisions about our own lives or our own businesses or our own farms or our own kids. Government understands that it is there to serve us as opposed to control us and direct us. And to me, that when I talk about changing that culture in our state agencies, that is so personal for people. Tim Walz will not do that, but we will. And, whether I'm talking to a sportsman or woman about how their DNR treats them, or talking to a daycare provider about how DHS is regulating them out of business, or talking to a farmer about the MPCA, or talking to any local official about the Met Council or the Department of Labor with small business owners, and just right on down that list, almost everybody I talk to is frustrated with the way government is treating them. And that is, we need to roll that back, not because government should never do anything. Government plays an important role in our society, but our state agencies, many of them don't seem to understand that their purpose to exist is to serve us and to help Minnesotans succeed. And, that's the vision. We need to get to that point, because we used to be at that point in Minnesota 30, 40 years ago. We're not there anymore.
We're talking with Jeff Johnson, Republican candidate for governor here in the state of Minnesota. JohnsonForGovernor.org is the website. You can check out, learn more about the campaign. Do you have another 10 minutes or so for us?
Sure. That'd be great.
All right, we'll go to a quick break. We'll come back and we'll get into more of the digging into these new fundraising numbers that have come out and the implications for the remainder of the general election race. Jeff Johnson on the line. Closing argument. My name is Walter Hudson, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130, 1035 FM, TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com.
Thanks for listening to KTLK AM Minneapolis. Don't miss Justice and Drew every weekday morning, 6 to 9 on AM 1130, 1035 FM, and the iHeartRadio app.
Hello, this is Tom Lyons, host of Today'sBusinessRadio.com, inviting you to tune in for our executive summaries, weekday mornings at 7:50 with Justice and Drew. You'll learn great business insights from top Twin Cities businesses, Alaris Financial, and Atomic Data.
Save now during the Audi Minneapolis and Audi St. Paul September savings event. With over 225 Audi models on the lots and ready to test drive, you're destined to find exactly the Audi to fit your lifestyle. There's no better time to buy. Take home the 2018 Q5 Premium Plus with navigation, leather interior, and more. Plus all-weather floor mats for those tough Minnesota winters for just $589 a month with $49.75 down. The Audi September savings event on now at Audi Minneapolis and Audi St. Paul. Includes tax, title, license, and dock fees. Lease term 36 months with 10,000 annual miles.
Hey guys, Carrie Noble here, and if you're wearing glasses, contacts, readers, or bifocals, the reality is that you're already spending money on your bad vision. And I get it, I was too, but why not invest with modern LASIK or one of the other advanced proven vision correction procedures with my friends at True Vision? I think I waited so long to get LASIK because I thought the recovery process would be really long. But after my LASIK procedure, I was seeing and feeling great the very next day. That's why I recommend you go see my friends at True Vision. Find out more and schedule right now online at truevision.com/cities or give them a call, 866-400-EYES.
It's official. My vehicle is not going to make it another winter. We're talking #jalopy. In fact, the last time I went to start it, I'm pretty sure I heard it cough out, "You gotta be kidding me." Time to talk to my local Klein Bank associate and take advantage of their special intro rate on car loans. With Klein Bank's help, I can fit a new SUV into my budget and be ready for the most important season next to winter, my son's hockey season. Get started today at kleinbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Opportunity Lender.
Hey, single listeners, it's time for something new. Something that will change your outlook on being single.
Something eventful that will help you live a life you love.
It's time for Events and Adventures.
Hi, I'm Mark Owen, the founder of Events and Adventures. We're a nationwide activities club that's been bringing together singles for great social events for over 30 years.
It's nothing like a dating app or a dating service. There's no pressure, no profiles, just great fun and great experiences with a lot of other singles like you.
You know, we found that when you're living a life you love, good things happen naturally. We make it easy to have a great social life each and every week.
We will fill your social calendar with over 30 events a month. All you have to do is show up and have fun.
Meet people face to face on adventures like hiking, kayaking, and hot air ballooning, or at local events like wine tastings, axe throwing, or dance classes. We even host trips all around the world. In the next year, we're traveling to Australia, Machu Picchu, Italy, and even Antarctica.
It's time to approach being single in a whole new way. Visit eventsandadventures.com. That's eventsandadventures.com. It's time to live a life you love.
From a massive cactus falling on a home to a deer dancing on a car's hood, we've covered it. Farmers, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Click for more.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Pros in the know start with Lowe's, because at Lowe's, pros can get up to 35% off select appliance special values. You can even save $138 on a GE Appliances White Kitchen Suite, now only $14.68. Plus, from $9.25 through $9.27, ask for 5% off all in-store purchases, and save an extra 5% when you use your Lowe's Business Credit account. So, pro, now that you know, start with Lowe's. Appliance special values valid through 10/17. GE Appliances offer valid through 9/26. Credit offer subject to credit approval and can't be combined with other credit offers. Exclusions apply. See store for details. U.S. only.
TakeMeFishing.org/Minnesota. TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com.
11:30 a.m.
Because you deserve the truth.
You're listening to Closing Argument with Walter Hudson.
Thursday morning on Justice and Drew, we'll have the latest on the Ellison investigation, the Kavanaugh circus that'll be coming up, and Katie Pavlich joins us at 8 o'clock.
Listen live 6 to 9, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.
Barbara Streisand.
The show is going to be preempted tomorrow night for your beloved sports, but of course it's a big news day tomorrow. We got the Kavanaugh hearings that may or may not actually occur. There's some other news that we're expecting tomorrow. So we're planning to do something on Facebook Live. Now, what the exact nature of that is kind of up in the air because we've been dealing with some technical things that we're trying to figure out. But expect something, and in order to tune into it, you'll have to go onto Facebook, onto our Facebook page, Closing Argument with Walter Hudson. Just do a search for that. Make sure you like it. Make sure you set it to be notified on your notifications, and you'll be able to follow whatever we come up with tomorrow night. And hopefully it'll be something.
Well, there'll at least be a podcast, so you can expect a podcast around this time of night.
Yeah, there will at the very least be a podcast, so there you go. All right, Closing Argument. My name's Walter Hudson, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130, 103.5 FM, 651-989-5855. We go back to Jeff Johnson, Republican candidate for governor, who is with us on the phone. We've been talking about your campaign, bringing people up to speed. Now, one anecdote that I recall from the immediate aftermath of the primary was you said you got a phone call from President Donald Trump, and that one of the first things he said was, "Isn't it nice to win?" when everybody said you wouldn't.
Yeah, it was actually a great. I've never met him. I'd never talked to him before, but he called and he started out by saying, "Hey, buddy, nice job on the election." And he said, "Isn't it fun to win when everybody thinks you're going to lose?" So he was either paying attention to the race or somebody at least filled him in on the race.
Sure.
And we just learned today that he's coming to town next week, which will be great.
Fantastic. Good to know. That's the first I've heard of it, so looking forward to that.
Well, I hope it's been announced, but yeah, he's coming to town next week.
Well, by no means don't take what I haven't heard as indication of what the rest of people have. You know, it's kind of hit or miss around here. But in terms of just that characterization, you know, you've been characterized as an underdog from the start. And that carried through the primary, and you surprised everyone on the evening of the primary. And it's continuing into the general election, where you've generally been regarded as somebody who is trying to catch up with the inherent advantage that Tim Walz has, merely by virtue of the fact that he's a Democrat in what has historically been a blue state. And yet we see the release of these fundraising numbers today, wherein you guys are right neck and neck in terms of the money that you've raised. Talk about that. Is this in line with your expectations, and how does it affect your momentum going forward?
It is in line with the expectations. Our goal was in that 7-week period, which was this reporting period up until last week, was to raise over $1 million, and with public subsidy, we actually raised over $1.3 million. About this, that we actually raised, I think, 15% more than him in actual contributions. It's just the DFL subsidy is $110,000 bigger than the Republican subsidy because more DFLers check that box off because they like to spend tax money more than Republicans do. So it was good, and I think, you know, when you talk about being the underdog, I don't know if I'm the underdog or not. I think it's probably a pretty close race. I pay absolutely no attention to polls because I think I was 18 points down to Plenty a week before the election and won by 9. So I don't think they're of much value. But what I can tell you is, if I had to guess today, we may be just a little bit behind because Walz has spent, I think, $2.1 or $2.2 million already, much of it on television during that primary. He was on broadcast TV with positive feel-good ads. I think we spent around $100,000 on TV. We spent a total of about $700,000. So he's outspent us more than 3 to 1 already. And we both have spending limits, by the way. So I actually have a lot more room to spend in these last six weeks than he does, as long as I keep raising the money. So I feel really good. I think the momentum is with us. The money continues to come in, and I'm working it really hard, as is Donna Bergstrom, my running mate. And that's going to, that's going to make all the difference in the world, because we'll win with the message. And he doesn't have a message. His message is, just happy talk, but he doesn't say anything of substance at all. He's very good at happy talk, by the way, but there's just nothing there. And we're talking about substance and change and more choice and control over your own health care and lower taxes so that you can keep more of what you earn and spend it on your own family, and actually enforcing immigration laws. And that message is resonating with people, but frankly, you need money to get it out. And so it's very encouraging.
Yeah, it's definitely encouraging to see how your campaign has done in terms of fundraising so far. Of course, what the campaigns raise is only part of the equation. You also have the activity of these outside groups, and of course the political parties themselves that have varying degrees of ability or demonstrated ability to raise money. How does that affect the dynamic, particularly in, we had the headline in recent days of the Republican Governors Association that pulled their reserved block of television time. Are you feeling overall as though your campaign's getting support from outside?
Yes, we're going to get outspent by a lot on the outside, and that's been the case with Republicans in Minnesota for probably 20 years now. The Alliance for a Better Minnesota, the lefty group that goes after Republicans, I think has spent almost $2 million against me on TV already, with 6 weeks remaining. So they may spend $3 to $4 million against me, and I don't think there's been a penny yet spent against Walz from the outside. My hope is that's coming. We hear that they're, obviously we can't coordinate, but we hear that there will be something there, hopefully very soon. And the RGA didn't pull all their money. They pulled a piece of their money, but I still think they have $1.2 million reserved for the end. And they have made it clear that they're just going to keep an eye on the race. And, my hope is that they are here to help, but our plan is based on winning without their help. So I would love it, but it's not crucial. And we went into this knowing that there would probably be a pretty significant outside spending disadvantage. And we've already seen it by a lot in the race. It's one of the reasons when I say that I might be a little bit behind. Part of it is that he's outspent me 3-1, and the other part is that I'm just getting pummeled on television by a very false ad about pre-existing conditions and health care. An ad that we're going to answer ourselves probably with our second commercial.
Yeah, let's talk very briefly, because we're running low on time, but about issues, and specifically, Brad and I on this program have spent a fair amount of time talking about what we perceive to be a need amongst Republicans, particularly in this state, because it has traditionally been a blue state, to shake things up and to take risks and to be more willing to throw their chips in the middle, as it were, and really be bold with policy prescriptions and attacking issues. I know that's something that's been on your mind and has been one of the cards you've been willing to play during your campaign. What would you cite, in terms of maybe one or two issues or stances you're taking and making a pillar of your campaign that really stand out as those bold messages that you're trying to put out there for Minnesotans?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is actually that overarching issue that we are going to go in and we are going to clean house in our state agencies. And, I've never actually heard a candidate say that before, because it's so hard to do, to actually remove people who aren't doing a good job or who aren't doing their job or who don't understand that their role is to serve. So to me, that is by far the most important, issue of shaking things up, or example of shaking things up that we can bring about. I've also been talking a lot about just legislative or government reform in general. Simple things like whether it's term limits or whether it is not signing omnibus bills that violate the Constitution, or it is, bringing pay for performance actually into the legislature and the governor's office and saying if you're the governor and the legislative leaders and you can't get your budget passed within the allotted time, you don't get paid during a special session. And some rulemaking reform, ways to really rein in our state agencies, many of which are out of control. That one really resonates with people, and it's something that, candidates like to talk about kind of on the edges, but aren't willing to just go all in and say these are some specific and very difficult things we're going to do. And then with respect to the size of government, people get scared when they hear, well, you're going to slash programs, and I've never talked about that. But what I do say is that after a 53% increase in state spending, there's actually room to reduce. And my first budget is going to be smaller than the last budget, which I think will be the first, maybe the second time in the last 50 years that that's happened in Minnesota. And when you explain that as not, we're just going to go in and cut 5% out of everything, but we're going to actually figure out what's working and what's not, and fund those programs that work and stop funding those programs that just make us feel good, that really does resonate, especially with independent voters.
Sounds great. Jeff Johnson, candidate for governor, running as a Republican here in the state of Minnesota. You can find out more at johnsonforgovernor.org. You did mention that President Trump is going to be coming. Is it next week?
Yeah, I believe it's next Thursday. He's coming down to Rochester for a big rally. I'm not sure I have the date right, but I believe it's next Thursday.
All right. Yeah. Well, certainly people will be able to find out more at johnsonforgovernor.org. Appreciate you spending so much time with us tonight, and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks, Walter. Bye-bye.